This is CBC Vancouver News.
The people that we know from town have all been reaching out and being able to gather updates and information.
Now with the weather change and the wind change, we're looking very hopeful now.
2 days and counting. Wildfire evacuees forced to abandon their homes are trying to stay positive as those who stayed behind try to help out. Plus,
neighboring properties were significantly damaged. House property to the east and to the west were fully consumed by the fire.
A brand new development goes up in flames in Maple Ridge, destroying 2 nearby houses and sending 200 neighbors out of their homes. And
you don't look around this area and think this is the perfect place to build more warehouses or parking lots. That thought just doesn't go there.
In Langley, the fight to keep wetlands out of the hands of developers. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. We begin in northeastern BC, where cooler weather and favorable winds are helping firefighters get a better handle on a massive wildfire near Tumbler Ridge. Still, the community of roughly 2,400 people remains under evacuation order tonight. The CBC's Nicole Aud is there, hearing from those who left and those who stayed behind.
It was a scramble for thousands suddenly ordered to leave their homes in Tumbler Ridge. But some chose to stay behind, offering to answer the pleas from evacuees to watch over their abandoned homes and look for lost pets.
Staying extremely busy. Honestly, I've probably been getting 3 to 4 hours sleep a night, and the rest of the time I'm doing whatever I can to try and make this a little easier on people.
Within hours of Thursday's evacuation order, strong winds pushed the flames within 5 kilometers of the community. But improved weather conditions have since slowed the spread, winds now blowing the fire away from town.
Having a day and maybe some into tomorrow of wind that is working in our favor, specifically again around the areas of concern by Tumbler Ridge, that's a lot of hours that we're able to work much closer to the fire.
To give those crews space, roadblocks are in place, keeping people out. But the mayor of Tumbler Ridge, who is still in town, knows people are looking for any information they can get.
Residents can still feel free to reach out to me. We're trying to keep everybody updated. We're trying to answer the questions that we have the information for.
Evacuation centers have been set up in Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, and Chetwynd. That's where evacuees can access essentials like accommodations and food vouchers. Keith Bertrand and his daughter Kyra are staying in their RV outside of Chetwynd and feeling positive.
It's looking much better than what it was a day ago, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely a lot more hopeful. And yeah, the nerves yesterday were kind of high, but with all of the updates and the fact that it hasn't grown very much in the last 24 hours, we're looking a lot better than a couple days ago.
If conditions continue to improve, they're hopeful they might be able to return home within the week. High hopes, hinging on Mother Nature alone. Nicole Aud, CBC News, Chetwynd, BC.
Well, today's rain on the south coast was also good news for crews battling the Cameron Bluffs wildfire on Vancouver Island.
So the crews are experiencing a bit of a reprieve with the dampness that's come in, so that's good news. The cooler day helps because the fire behavior is much lower. Right now they're seeing what we call a smoldering ground fire, so it's just smoke on the ground with a little bit of open flame.
The wet weather has slowed that fire's growth, but still 76 firefighters are on the ground there, along with 4 helicopters dousing the flames from the air as well. Crews say the biggest challenge they're facing right now is the danger from falling trees and debris, and the air quality remains very poor in that area. Meanwhile,
we're having a lot of problems with danger trees and rolling debris. Our crews are fighting that as well. That's something that's a big safety concern for us. And debris is coming down as far as the highway.
Highway 4 remains closed between Port Alberni and the eastern part of the island, but a detour has now reopened in order to make sure essential goods can get to Port Alberni. The province says there will be 4 special convoys for commercial vehicles beginning tomorrow. And so let's take our first look at the forecast and see what's in store, especially for those wildfires. We'll start with the current temperatures, and you can see the overnight lows and the daytime highs. really aren't varying all that much right now, at least on the south coast with that wetter, drizzly weather we saw today. That's, of course, good news for the very dry conditions. But will we get more of it where it matters most? Here's a look province-wide, a bird's eye view. You can see all that unstable air that's coming up through Montana across into Washington state. That's pushing up stateside into BC, and that's bringing some pockets of precipitation, but also the bad news, the lightning. And so we've seen some lightning strikes in and around Prince George. That'll be a concern. Over the next few days, that should begin to ease off. The Kootenays is where we're going to watch that potential threat in the coming days. I'll get into more of that in the 5-day forecast coming up at the end of the show. Well, to a fire of a different nature now, and a blaze in a residential area burned for 10 hours overnight, and it's forced about 200 people out of their homes. This is in Maple Ridge, where a reception center has now been set up. The damage is so bad, with multiple houses destroyed.
Crews found an apartment building that was under construction. The building had been completely framed, but no interior separations or external cladding had been applied to the building yet. The building was fully involved, and as a result of the fact that there was no fire separations in the building, the fire progressed very quickly and very significantly.
The fire tore through houses on either side of this new residential development. It's just off Dewdney Trunk Road and 227th Street. The flames sparked up around midnight, and despite 50 firefighters on it, this fire burned until 10 o'clock this morning, evacuating many neighboring homes. The city calls it devastating. No one was injured, but roads in the area were closed for most of the day. Anyone who lives nearby and has breathing issues is urged to find somewhere else to stay for the time being because of residual smoke. Investigators are still looking into what caused this fire. As the Fraser Valley Transit strike drags on, calls for a resolution are growing louder and more urgent. People with disabilities lined the streets of Mission today, demanding a swift end to the months-long labor dispute. On Thursday, a mediator was appointed by the province, but as our Janella Hamilton reports, passengers who need transit the most insist that should have been done long ago.
And the bus strike, end it now.
Jean-Pierre Mayer says without public transit, he is often forced to walk to his job at Starbucks, close to 4 kilometers each way from his home. And he says it's always an uphill battle, given Mission's hilly terrain.
If there's any wildfire smoke or it's too hot out, then it affects then it would be a health risk.
The transit strike has meant Tracy Martin has had to change her work hours because she's instead having to rely on family and friends for rides. She says it gives her anxiety, feeling like a burden on others.
It's taken away our independence. From shopping to doctor's appointments to just going out with your friends, we have no independence.
All buses in the Fraser Valley were halted when the strike hit in March. Handy Dart is only providing essential services for passengers requiring treatment for cancer, multiple sclerosis, and dialysis. For Shay Velastuck, it's impacting her mental health. She has no way to get to or from her day program.
We go out in the community and do things and just have fun, and it's hard to get there when we don't have bus systems to get us there.
It's downright it's unacceptable. There's all kinds of problems that this creates.
This disability advocate says she knows of at least one person who lost their job because they couldn't get to work on time. And for some, the strike is putting a major strain on families.
And a lot of the individuals that are part of our group, their families are seniors. They're senior families. They don't need this added stress.
Many here say they're grateful the province has finally appointed a mediator, but they believe government should have stepped in sooner.
We feel strongly it should have happened back in April when all the communities that were affected by this strike had appealed to government to appoint somebody.
In a statement, First Transit says it is hopeful the special mediator will help both sides come to an agreement, a hope that is shared by those affected most. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Mission.
Well, still on the roads, gas prices have surged past $2 a litre in Metro Vancouver. It's the most drivers have been paying at the pump since last November. Experts say the spike is a result of, surprise, surprise, increased demand and shorter supply. And drivers, by the way, you are being warned to buckle up for an expensive summer when it comes to filling up your tank. A Vancouver developer is proposing an industrial development in place of wetlands in Langley. The area is home to wildlife, and residents are pushing back against the proposal, saying there would be extreme environmental damage. As our Yasmin Gandam reports, activists argue the wetlands are crucial to preserve in the fight against climate change.
Well, that can move the water, but it no longer supports the animals in that area.
West Creek Wetlands in Langley is home to salmon, beavers, deer, and more. On top of being home to wildlife, it's also incredibly important to the community.
You don't look around this area and think this is the perfect place to build more warehouses or parking lots. That thought just doesn't go there. And developers want to put it anywhere, even if it's a natural habitat.
The 92 acres of land prevent flooding, with drainage ponds helping to reduce wildfires. The proposal by BD Group calls on the township of Langley to rezone the land from a golf course to industrial use and stormwater detention facilities. But environmentalists like Kirk Robertson say even making ponds deeper will cause damage to wildlife like coho salmon.
This is spawning ground, and it's very troubling when you look at the report that went from staff to council, where they don't even indicate that there are water courses here that are fish bearing.
In a statement to CBC, the township says a public hearing will be scheduled for Monday to obtain feedback on the proposal. Langley Mayor Eric Woodward says council hasn't voted yes yet, and adds the application considers preserving nearly half the wetlands, 55 acres, as part of the West Creek watershed.
It may sound generous to be, donating to the township for preservation, mind you, only after they've mucked around with it some more. But given what the past history has been, it's a false appearance.
These concerned residents and environmental activists are doing what they can to preserve what they call a historical landmark in Langley.
Protecting our watersheds is not a one-and-done deal. We cannot rely on legislation and higher levels of government to do our job. It's up to us as community members, local officials, to do what's right and protect these lands.
The group will be sharing their feedback at the council meeting, hoping the wetlands can remain a source of environmental protection. If the project is approved, the township would receive $14 million in community amenity contributions from the BD Group to be used for construction of recreation facilities, parks, and other public spaces. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Langley.
A 48-hour car rally kicked off today, raising money for ALS research and treatment. It's the fourth annual event started by a man who lost his father to the disease 2 years ago.
And combining my passion for cars with a cause that has directly affected me seemed like a natural way to raise money and awareness for, a fairly poorly understood disease. And yeah, it's grown over the years, and it's kind of evolved into a 2-day thing and a 6-month kind of campaign of rough events around Vancouver.
The parade of cars is currently heading to Hope, Kamloops, Lillooet, then back down to Vancouver. The ultimate goal is to raise $500,000 for ALS research this year. It is a big night for mixed martial arts fans in Vancouver. The UFC just held its first event in Canada in nearly 4 years here, and Canadian fighters made their home crowd proud.
You could feel it at the Fighter Hotel. I feel like I could feel it when I touched down in the country, that everyone in Canada, they were ready for this UFC, and I felt the whole country on my back going into that fight, and I felt like I had to represent the country. This was for us.
Jasmine Jazudavikius, the one competing in red, was a sizable underdog before entering the cage, but she walked out with a win. She was one of 5 Canadian fighters competing in the UFC event at Rogers Arena tonight. This was the first Canadian fight card, by the way. The promotion is held since before the pandemic, and all 5 of the Canadian fighters won, including Montreal's Ayman Zahabi, who scored a first-round knockout.
And it was just incredible to hear the Ole come to me. I had to start it.
It was good. I started it, but it was great to hear it come back. You know, when they used to do that for George and any of the top Canadian guys, I love it. And I was just, you know, it's a dream come true for me. It's one of those life mini goals, and it was nice to achieve that here in Canada.
And meanwhile, Ontario-born Mike Malo won via submission. After the break, meet the musician who makes instruments out of recycled material. That's straight ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's take you to the headline news in the States now. And Ted Kaczynski, he's the man dubbed the Unabomber, has died in prison. He was arrested in 1996 for a string of bombings over the course of 17 years. 3 people were killed. He had been a math professor before retreating to a solitary existence in the wilderness. Kaczynski did plead guilty. He said he carried out the bombings to draw attention to what he saw as the dangers of modern technology. He was 81 and passed away in prison in North Carolina. Well, go ahead. You can call his music garbage. He's just fine with that. We now introduce you to a musician and composer who creates his own tunes out of castaways.
I build musical instruments out of recycled material. I'm trying to make an entire orchestra. I've invented musical instruments of my own devising and then writing music for that. Some things I've just found and gone, oh, this is cool, it looks great, what does it sound like? Or I find bits of other broken things that look like they'll belong to other broken things, and then there's a lot of play and experimentation that goes on. I've been building instruments for 22, 23 years using metal fabrication and welding. Before that, I just used to use found objects. Recycled stuff gives me new sound, new texture, lots of inspiration, but I also like finding things that other people have touched with their hands already and cast off. So things that had a life before I grabbed a hold of it, and I feel like I'm bringing something back into the mix. I love using this is all BC-based stuff for the most part, and love British Columbia, big province, so I make big instruments, large-scale articulated sculptures. This puppy right here is called the Pippolini. It's 30 chunks of stainless steel and aluminum and regular ordinary steel, and it's cut to different lengths. And a lot of this came from the pulp mill up island, up in around Nanaimo. All these brand new instruments that came out of local recycled material, lampshades from Camosun College. What this is a remnant from when the BC ferries were making the fast cats. All of this incredible aluminum came through our scrapyards on Powell Street, and this was a piece of the stuff that was marked BC shipyards. And it was a flat sheet of aluminum that I ended up making into this form. These are called cycordians, and I found a discarded Bellini accordion in a dumpster, and the bellows was gone, but all of the reed banks are great. So I cut them out, and with the jeweler's saw, I cut out the individual reeds and then re-glued them into these couplings I got from one of those places that reconstitute used housing stuff. This is a military surplus, old howitzer shell. They're beautiful. The metal sounds incredible. And I cut them to tune them to different pitches, and there's a wide variety of sounds.
Fascinating stuff. Well, this was sunset this evening from the Long Beach Lodge in Tofino. A cooler, wetter day on the south coast, yes, but will any of that rain be heading to the regions that need it most? I'll have your full forecast coming up next.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
And so let's take a look now at the full 5-day forecast. We'll start with those current conditions in Vancouver. 14 degrees right now. Those clouds will continue through the overnight hours. By morning, those clouds will begin to move on. So we'll see those breaks of sunshine return. We know that system It was supposed to be kind of a one-day blip from Friday. It really stuck around on the south coast for Saturday as well, so it'll gradually move through and clear out by Sunday. Here's tomorrow's forecast province-wide. Let's focus on the southeast part of BC and the Kootenays. You can see for Cranbrook and even through the Okanagan as well, a chance of lightning. That's bad news anywhere there's really dry conditions right now. Good news is it looks like those threats, for the most part, no significant threats of those new lightning strikes possible in the northeastern part of BC where the wildfires currently are. So otherwise across BC, lots of sunshine, warm temperatures, fairly seasonal for the lower mainland. Here's the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver. A little bit of everything this week. A few clouds off and on, but fairly warm in the low 20s. Could see a chance of showers, just 60% though for Tuesday. Otherwise, we're right on par for where we should be for this time of year. Well, this week, CBC's Daybreak South program was on the road recording a special edition of the show on location in the Kootenays. It's all part of an ongoing spring reading series called Kootenays Cover to Cover. And Daybreak host Chris Walker interviewed local authors and panelists in Nelson, Creston, and Fernie. He was joined by Kootenay reporter Corey Bullock, who brings us this story.
Good morning. What you find when you're in the Kootenays is the variety of backgrounds and experiences that people have, and all the different places they've come from.
Well, I guess when I teach somebody how to ski or teach somebody to ride, I give them something they're going to carry forward in their life for the rest of their life. And there aren't many things you can do that work like that.
It sounds like it's been important to you.
Really.
You know, as you can see in a town like Fernie, CBC has a special place in a lot of people's hearts.
Good morning, I'm Chris Walker, broadcasting this morning from Nelson. Good morning, Nelson. Jenny, why is dissent important? What does it do? What's its role in a democracy?
It's a great question. I think at its very best, it's actually a motor of social progress.
You mentioned a moment ago that writing is scary enough without a scary editor. What is it that's scary about writing?
Because it's very vulnerable. You're putting your sense of self, your whole self, your heart, your mind, your feelings, your past, your present, down on a page for other people to judge. There's nothing more terrifying.
Understand climate change. I believe it's an all-hands-on-deck situation we're in right now. We need everybody to be working to both mitigate and adapt to climate change.
It's just so heartwarming to meet all the people and to hear what CBC means to little communities around the Kootenays. It's been really fun.
And with that, we'll say goodbye. That is your late news for this Saturday. For news anytime, of course, you can always head to our website. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local newscast is on North by Northwest. That's on CBC Radio 1 starting tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.